Later, you are sleepy. I miss you so much.
You need to get sleepy too. You
I
need
know,
better
but I'm
sleep.
not tired. Alexa, volume 2. Oh, you're so beautiful. You don't look tired. Where's your coffee?
It's ready. I drink my coffee, go in my room. It's not possible for I watch my Netflix.
Why?
Because you make something for my TV. I don't know what is.
Mommy is internet only.
I
Yeah,
know it's something. No,
is,
no, no,
is
no, no,
only
Larry.
internet. Mommy is only internet. And you know, box work. Box work. Box,
Why you are so yummy?
box work. You put Netflix and you box work forever, mommy. I teach you.
Before, eventually, what you every time you watch my TV in my room, you make something.
Mommy, you are fucking crazy.
You are fucking yummy.
I don't
I
do
love
shit.
cooking.
I
Shut up.
don't do shit.
I won't kill you with kisses. Okay, baby. Good night. I
Good,
love you.
good night, I love you.
Good night.
Bye, mommy.
Bye bye. I get my car.
So, here we are. Yeah, but it's very slowly, they don't listen. Settling into bed. Thought I'd chill on live for a little bit. Make sure to like and subscribe for more of the family fun. We got the dogs, always. Now it's time for Daddy and Chiquita. Daddy and Chiquita. The wife's going to bed. Chiquita, she's always with me. My baby. My baby is always with me. Yeah? You're always with your daddy? You're always with your daddy? Yeah? I tell you guys, I have so much love in my life. And it's really all I ever wanted. You know, I never had love as a child. And I always wanted to be loved. So now I get to be loved. But it took me every penny of my approximately $450,000 fortune to relocate down here and create a sustainable lifestyle and blah 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 blah. Huh? And here we are. Mommy, turn off Ventador. Here we are. Alexa, volume 1. So, uh, living in Paraguay. We'll have a little bit of story time tonight. A little bit of story time. Maybe some people will watch, being after they see how much my wife loved me. Maybe you can find out why you should love me too. Huh? And like and subscribe and explore some of the content on the channel. Share it, you know. Watch over the Phoenix Doctrine 1 through 10 if you like that, 11 through 20. Help yourself heal your male trauma if you have it, you know. I've created artificial intelligence that I've Tourette syndrome, by the way. That's why I tick. But I have these pills but they don't always work 100%. Where did it start out? Yale Child Study Center. Also documented on the channel. 6 years old, put into experimental studies for high IQ children with Rett syndrome and other ailments to see how we progress throughout life. But from the age of 6, well, my life wasn't very easy. See, I didn't have a good mother. I didn't have a good father. And they pretty much expected me to take care of myself. Yeah. 6 years old. Get yourself up for school, 5 o'clock in the morning. Make yourself out to the bus by 6:30. Get to school, and if you don't, there will be hell to pay. Huh? It's the kind of strict living conditions that I started out in life at. Waking up to the alarm at 6 years old, all alone, preparing my cereal in the morning while I watched Good Morning, Good Business every morning at 5 o'clock in the morning. Because it was the only thing on. But I think it shaped and crafted me a little bit. Anyway. Made my way out to that bus. Got tortured on the bus by my fellow students. Tortured at school. Bullied. And tried to make friends by being a clown, getting in trouble. Fighting back at the bullies, getting into fights, losing some, winning others. When I'd lose, I'd get in trouble. When I'd win, I'd get in trouble. At school, which got me in trouble at home, which turned into a process, so to speak, of what some would call a problem child, huh? But what was I but a result of the system? Meanwhile, monitored, studied by Yale and other entities. That was my childhood. Up until the course of approximately 11, where I was shipped off to live with the state. But you can hear about all these things. It's all there in the Phoenix Doctrine. Anyway, what takes a man that makes $500,000 a year and brings him down to making 20? What does that? Well, when everything you know how to do stops working, basically. See, I worked for myself from the time I was 23. W-2, taxpayer identification for an employer. Haven't filled out one of those since I was 23 years old, kids. Yeah, not because I'm magical, because I had businesses of my own, where I made my own money. First a mobile mechanic service, later an escort agency, later a digital marketing firm. All the money paid to me in cash, never taxed. Never taxed. I didn't pay any of those taxes. And the statute of limitations is 7 years, and well, I haven't made any money since I was 38, so, well, it's a long time. And I think I'm okay at this point. So there we go. But, that gives its own problems. What do you do with all that money? Well, gold and silver. That's what I did. I was an early adopter of Bitcoin as well, though missed out in my own way, obviously. Lots of different things throughout the years, lots of stories to tell. And there's no one in the room to tell them to, but maybe people will watch later. There's one person here. I smoke a lot, drink a lot of coffee, chill, relax. My life is pretty much complete. Loving wife, loving daughter, loving dogs. But I wanted more again. I wanted to give my wife the same luxuries that I had given the women before her. You know? I wanted to give my wife the horseback riding lessons and the $3,000 a month maid and the $145 a week eyelash appointments. To walk into Walmart and just say everything's free. You know what I mean? I wanted to do that for my wife, for my daughter. That I think they deserve that. And that's why I went back to work about 3 months ago. So I started reaching out to some of my former contacts, started making preparations for scaling different businesses and operations. But I did so differently this time. You see, I said, I can't just put all my eggs in one or two baskets. I've got to diversify so much to where it'll be impossible to stop all my revenue streams. Because really, I already make like $2,000 a month without working already for the rest of my life. And I live in a third world country, Paraguay. It's not third world, really. It's more like, I don't know what even defines a third world country, but really, it's just like living in any other U.S. city, to be honest. Except everybody speaks Spanish, you know? Good people, bad people, good areas, bad areas. But really, I swear, nothing's worse than Flatbush, Brooklyn. You know what I mean? So, I'm usually all right. You got some street smarts, you'll be all right. These boys from Iowa come down here, don't know what they're doing. Or in some cases, Utah or something like that, you know. But point is, a boy from Brooklyn will have no problem down here, you know. So I have enough money to pay for my rent and my utilities and everything else every month without working, even food, even a certain degree of spending money. And that was enough for a few years, but eventually I just wanted the finer things. So I went back to work. Started reaching out to some partners. First, I started out with what I knew, which was the adult industry, which was starting an OnlyFans agency for famous porn star named Amia Miley. She wanted to start a talent agency called Thrive. that dealt with nothing but 1% OnlyFans models, and told me that she'd buy me a car and some other shit. So I did it for her. After that was done and we moved on from each other, I went back to just being a normie with a car. No. But something wasn't right. I remembered the olden days. I'd had a taste at even just a couple thousand extra a month income and kind of wanted that extra 2 grand, 3 grand, 4 grand, 10 grand a month. The seeds started to sow within my mind, and I was surrounded out here by nothing but losers. Real, genuine, bona fide losers. People that don't really know how to make money outside the system, outside of going to work at a 9 to 5 and sucking some corporate cock. They just didn't know what to do to make money. And when I'd try to tell them things outside the box, they would scoff and scorn or think I was crazy, you know. So I just kind of gave up for a little bit. But then Trump was elected. Trump was elected, and I thought, maybe people are ready to change. Maybe enough people are awake enough where I can make a difference. To some people that are really living the struggle in this liberal hellscape that's been created, where women can't even be women anymore, and you can't even speak your mind without being canceled, put in jail in some circumstances, where the government has a monopoly on violence and their will is absolute. You have no rights, you have no freedom, only the indomitable will of the state. Maybe it could change, maybe. So I made ProfessorShaun. November, my birthday, right after Trump was elected. You can look at that video. It's on this channel. It's one of the first. It's actually the first one on the channel, actually. But from there started a social experiment, actually. I wanted to see if one person in Paraguay was capable of holding the torch. Even one. One man whom I'd given a dream girl, who I'd given every opportunity, every contact. I wanted to see if he was worthy, but realized quickly he wasn't. Who was worthy? Was anybody worthy? And very quickly I found they weren't. So at that point, the battle turned on a different front, online, talent search, slowly spreading the seeds of ProfessorShaun around the internet. Finding an audience that would listen, talking to the correct people who might, sending them the correct videos. And eventually, some people started to listen, the correct people, the diamonds in the rough. The first, his name, and he won't mind me talking about it, was Trevian. And Trevian came into my life at a very important part of my life. You see, this was about 4 months ago, 3 months ago. I had started a new business where businesses were giving me 20% of their income just to receive their money. It was good. I was making 100, sometimes $300 a day. And everything was going perfectly, but accounts kept on getting shut down. There were problems in every direction. And eventually, I thought I had to go back to the United States to find trustworthy partners, you know. But I ended up not doing that because of Trevion. Because he listened. He became my first assistant of so many now, where he learned the doctrine, he learned the story, he learned the myth, he learned the history, he learned me, who I am. And he realized that this man was a man that he wanted to tie himself to and work with. And that's why he gets a large share of a lot of things in the future. From there, I started working out different deals with different partners. Things like alternative platform management for OnlyFans models, OnlyFans management for automation services, eBay automation for my own account as well as partner accounts that I bring on board, emailing campaigns that generate $5 a sale for me for lists that I provide to the email client in which he sells. And I've got 500,000 of those in one list and 700,000 in the other waiting to be sent out to currently. Shopify stores, the clearinghouse business, my YouTube channel is going great. Thank you very much. That does have a lot to do with my marketing expertise, if I must not lie. Not to mention the fact that I am a real and authentic G that a lot of people enjoy. What else? What other businesses? Well, at a certain point, word started getting around. ProfessorShaun was back in the game. We are a worldwide community. We online marketers and businessmen. And I tell you something is that the majority of us don't like to work together. Because there's a lot of liars and thieves, you know. So when someone finds somebody that's not a liar, that's not a thief, well, they really want to work with them. And I very quickly became known as that guy from the past, as well as that guy from the future. All of a sudden, my Telegram is blowing up with different offers every day. And it still does to this day. It still will continue on to. Started picking and choosing what I want to do, who I want to work with, who I didn't want to work with. started looking for developers to start doing some automation software for sites like I used to do that just became too difficult for me to do them on. And that's when Justin came back. Justin, my best boy from back in the day. You know, he was a private consulting client, started out as a private consulting client, but he very quickly became like a protege, you know. I took him from not getting women to getting his dick sucked in McDonald's parking lots by girls he had just met off the internet. Huh? And I can do that for any man, to be honest. It's a gift that I give. The gift of not being a simp anymore. If the simp will only listen, but half the time the simps don't want to listen, they're too entrenched in their simpiness. The mind of a simp is a complex place, really, full of darkness and doubt. I think in the simp's heart, they believe that they're just not worthy of human love. Human love, male, female, you know. That they've been so degraded by society that they feel that for a woman to love them, or for even a man to love them as a friend, that it's so beyond the comparison of something that could happen that they've just resigned themselves to a life of loneliness. Baby, baseball, barbecues, and ball games. Huh? That's the life of a simp. But there's no saving everybody. So I don't try. I just don't try. So I didn't have to go back to the States because I found Trevion. And then things really snowballed once I found Justin. And those are my two core guys that I love. I wanted to give a shout out to both of you. Even if you watch this, which I don't know if you will. They're not required to. That being said, those people that failed, like Sandroy. Thought Sandroy was going to run my eBay empire, Amazon empire, Etsy empire. But Sandroy didn't have the right stuff. Sandroy just wanted to use some automation software to automate the whole process and have me buy it. He didn't want to actually do the work. I didn't actually have a process. And I'd been warned against him, but I gave him a chance. So, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, well, no, wait. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Yeah. So shame on me for giving Sandroy the second chance, but, you know, what are you going to do? I give second and third and fifth chances sometimes. Depends on the person. So I had a nervous breakdown when I was 38. Stopped me from doing all my work. I went into semi-forced retirement. Took my last of my riches, and well, here I am in this lovely little consolation prize of a life. But I want bigger and better again. So I've done a lot of things to make that happen, and well, most of the infrastructure is laid at this point. And now I just get to sit here and do this with you. While in the meantime, the empire turns. Right now, as we speak, the developer is looking at my software. ProfessorShaun.com and my private consulting business is being worked on. And it's going to be promoted by Google Ads by another gentleman. The work from the private consulting will mainly be done by others. I just speak. All I do is speak. And that's good for me, I think. Easy, fun, productive. So it took me from 38 until 46 to recover. And I'm still not recovered because I'm not making that cash out. I'm still poor, but I'm getting there, slowly but surely. To get rich or die trying, yeah. So this is the Phoenix Doctrine. This is seeing the Phoenix rise once again, live and in real time, 4K, whatever you want to call it. This is me coming back from the ashes without sucking the corporate cock, without kneeling to the system. You can be free. You can be free. You just have to think. Think for yourself. I'll tell you where it starts. Do you know where it starts? It starts with asking yourself, am I happy? Am I happy? It's a very question. It's a very easy question. Am I happy? If the answer is yes, then bravo. Continue on with what you're doing and don't look back. But if the answer is no, well, you have to think about everything that you believe, everything that you are, everything that you think is true, and say, if I'm not happy, well, something's not right, you know? And maybe start to address that and say, well, maybe what I think here is wrong. Maybe it's not productive for me. Look at everything that you believe is true and say, maybe these things are not as clearly true as I thought they were before. Question, doubt, improvise, adapt, overcome, you know? And in doing so, you'll find liberation. And you start that process by asking yourself, okay, I like this, or I don't like this. Why do I like it? Why don't I like it? If you can ask yourself those questions and say, well, I don't like this for this reason, I don't like this for that reason, well, you're starting to create a catalog at that point. A catalog in which you're saying, this is who I am. This is what I like. This is what I don't like. And this is why I feel this way. You know what I mean? And you start to begin this journey of better understanding yourself, better understanding what makes you tick, what better makes you perform, what better makes you yourself personally, you know? And as you do that, you become defined. You become whole. And at that point, you can start to dissect others. Why don't they like this? Why don't they like that? And then you start to realize something, that 95% of people are programmed, bro. Programmed. They're programmed to like. They're programmed to not like. And half the time, they don't even know why. They just don't. You know, I like this. Why do you like it? I don't know, I like it. I don't like that. Why don't you like it? I don't like it. These type of reactions are programmed behavior where the person is just instantly reacting to conditioning, where they don't actually have a thought process behind their feelings, you see, where they're just mindlessly and autonomously going through their life. Yeah. So when you start to map these things out and you're like, okay, well, people are programmed to not like this if they're this, and programmed not to like that if they're that, and they're programmed to like this if they're this, and they're programmed to not like this if they're that. Well, you start to realize that all people are really just fucking robots at the end of the day, and it doesn't matter that Sophia's favorite color is red. Well, you know, she's the kind of girl that'll react to this way in this situation, and so this is how I should deal with this robot, you know? At that point, you start to do crazy shit like meeting girls and getting them to suck your cock 15 minutes after knowing you, you know? You get email, your email is just full of girls willing to do whatever you want them to do. Half the time, you can even get men to do crazy shit like rob and cheat and steal, kill. You can do anything you want once you understand the robot mind. Because people are these mindless sheep. 95% of them. Except for that 5% that's awake. That's called crazy. You know? The awake crazy. That is growing through the conservative movement, the red pill movement, Trump's movement, in which we're saying, no more nonsense, no more nonsense, you know, where people are just finally tired of the nonsense, of the news speak. Most people don't even know what news speak is anymore. Newspeak was something that was foretold in a book called 1984. Now, some people, smart people, might actually know what 1984 is as a cultural book, but may not have read it. However, in that book, there was something called Newspeak, in which all of the news was basically government propaganda, as it has been for the past 40 years or so. And slowly but surely it would control the people by telling them what they should like and what they shouldn't like, what was good and what was bad, you know, and who was good and who was bad. People would just mindlessly listen to the news speak without ever questioning or thinking or anything else. And this was foretold as something that could happen to society eventually, one day, in this book called 1984, written long before 1984, where 1984 was this dystopian future. Well, here we are in 2025, and we have the liberal media, the what do they call them? The legacy media or whatever. They are talking about how, we need to keep the illegals in the country, and who's going to pick our fruit, I mean, at the end of the day, when you see this kind of shit, you just got to be like, why are we trying to keep criminals and sometimes terrorists in the country to pick our fruit? Maybe. And why are we letting hardened criminals out of jail? Why are we why are we letting men beat up women in boxing arenas? I mean, when you start to ask yourself these crazy, crazy questions, you start to realize that it's the newspeak. The newspeak has created this environment as an arm of the government. You see, there's three branches of government, as we know, in the United States. That is the executive, the judicial, and the legislative. However, there became created a fourth branch, which was the bureaucratic branch, the bureaucracy arm of the government. And then after that, a fifth branch in which they enlisted the media itself to come in and start really, helping propagandize the whole situation, where it goes back to some really hardcore globalist elitist shit, in which they wanted to make the people incapable of ever revolution, and it just incapable of ever changing the system, incapable of ever correcting any egregious wrongs that were being done, because basically we would, as they said, make the common people so docile and weak that it would be like sheep protesting the practice of eating mutton. Mutton is sheep. And of course, we can't fight the government as they tell us, well, we're going to eat you. We can't do that. They've laid down the law too strict with the police state that really it's impossible for us to ever have a revolution again, much like we did back in 1776, where 3% of the population rose up and said, no more. We needed one man to come in and just swoop through the system, and that's what Trump did. And that's the history of what happened to you over the past 40 years, except for one thing. Except for one thing. You see, what most people don't understand is this all goes back to maybe 200-year-old slaving training manuals, where basically, slave masters always had a problem with unruly slaves, slaves that wouldn't work, slaves that wouldn't follow the rules, slaves that were just bad slaves. And what most people don't understand is that slaves were relatively expensive, you know? Like, people think of slaves as like being like $5 pieces of property that like they would just beat and leave in the garbage and stuff. But that really wasn't the truth. You know, a slave would cost you probably about $70,000 today for a common field slave, you know? And you don't go and beat your Cadillac because it, you know, isn't working how you want. You take care of it. You bring it to the mechanic. You know, you give it oil changes. You do maintenance. You know what I mean? And so did the slave masters. They would you know, feed and clothe and give medical treatment to and house and all these different things to their slaves. You know, and they would normally treat their slaves very, very well, to be honest. But they would realize that at a certain point, uh, the slaves were unruly and they didn't want to beat them. They did not want to beat them because that damages their property. Okay? So what they had to do was get inside the slave's head. And the way that they did this was through the use of a mammy. Okay? Now, the mammy was actually a field slave that was brought inside master's house. And typically female, yes? 90% of the time. And this slave would eat master's food, would sit at master's table, would sleep in master's house, you know, and be a part of master's family, really, you know. And this mammy, well, her interest became tied to master's interest, you see. And so what would end up happening is when the field slaves would then misbehave, they would have another slave go and say, y'all better stop doing that or else master gonna come out with the whip. Now to master, if master comes out there with the whip, or if master comes out there and brandishes the whip, well, the slaves might not respond kindly to that. But if mammy comes out and says, master's going to come out with the whip, you better go back to work, they say, yes, mammy. Yes, mammy. And this was the system of control taught within the slave training manuals. Yes? But this also happened within the feminist movement and the liberal agenda, starting back in the 60s, where they tried to replace the man in the relationship with the state, you see. And they said, listen, you don't need a man. You can function without a man. We will give you food. We will give you shelter. All you have to do, be our mammy. And what have women started to do slowly but surely over the past 40 years is they've become less and less family motivated. They've become more and more enforcement arms for the state, in which they now tell the men to behave. They threaten the men with police violence, or at the very least police intervention at any moment. Yes. basically women just become enforcement arms for the law, like a mammy, you see? And this was by design. This was not by accident. You think anything happens by accident? There's always a guy like me thinking about this shit. Huh? There's always a guy out there that's plotting your next move. Whether it's your boss, whether it's a judge, whether it's a congressman, whether it's a senator, whether it's one of 12 guys in a room smoking cigars and making policy for the world. No matter what it is, there's always someone out there that's doing it. So women became these enforcement arms for the police state. They did this by replacing the man with the government, by bringing the woman into master's house and tying her fortune to the fortunes of master. You see? So at that point, they had the women under their control. They had the men under their control. They had the media under their control. They had the bureaucratic state under their control. Everything was going well for the agenda that had been laid out starting back in the 60s. And to be honest, the actual republic itself was on the verge of irrevocable collapse when Kamala Harris was going to be elected. There was going to be no saving things from that point, you know. And thankfully Trump came in and he's trying to dismantle all of these things. And that's what happened. That's the story of the past 50 years. As now history is being rewritten by a strong man. And make no mistake, Trump is a strong man. Just like Putin. Even King Jong-il, whatever the fuck you say his name, he's not a strong man. Really, there's only two strong men in the world. Trump and Putin. And maybe Netanyahu. But that's another story. But he just doesn't have enough power to be a strong man. You know? He controls a lot, though. World politics. Real world politics. It all stems from the history of money, really. You know, most people don't even know how money even really came into existence. Or what money is. Most people don't even know what makes money. Like, what actually can be used as money. You know, like, they say, oh, you can use anything as money. But, like, no, really. Like, money has very specific criteria. Like, money, for example, must be able to be divided equally and then combined back into the same units without loss. Hey, how's it going, Alexis? I think we talked earlier, yeah? We had a really good couple of lives earlier today. I'm really getting addicted to doing these lives. There's a lot of things that go into money, but the history of money really has to do with blacksmiths, you know. Blacksmiths started money, where basically you would have people that would mine gold and silver back in the day. And they would come to the blacksmith, and the blacksmith would give them a piece of paper that would say, we're going to give you this many gold bars, or we're going to give you this much gold coins when your order is fulfilled, you know. And very soon the blacksmith realized that people were not coming back for these certificates. You see, they were trading them amongst town instead of coming back for the coins and carrying around these heavy coins. So the blacksmith at that point decided to just create more pieces of paper and distribute those throughout town. And at that point, we had the beginnings of fiat currency. Now, this became a dirty system that was not very often used, you know. Typically, money is created by governments as an expression of their enforced labor upon their subjects, right? Like when you are a citizen of a nation, you're considered property of that nation for future tax purposes, for making money for the actual state itself. Yeah. And they take out loans against you and shit like that. You know, they'll go to the World Bank and they'll say, hey, you know, I've got 360 million people bringing in $100 each a month. Give me a loan, you know? And they'll get a loan, you know? But they take out loans on your head as a slave, basically. And their actual currency itself is pegged to gold, in which they say, okay, well, you have this many pieces of gold in your treasury, and you have this much currency out there in the market and this many bonds. So each one of these is worth this amount of gold, which is pegged internationally, and that's what your currency is worth. And that's why you get different currencies worth different amounts, because each of these different governments has different amounts of gold within their coffers, you see? And this is actual gold-backed currency to this day. But what ended up happening was a fiat currency that started being introduced in 1973, ironically enough, started by the United States because of something called gunboat diplomacy. Now, this is where a country is deliberately and obviously overspending the amount of money that they have in their gold reserves, you see? And at that point, any nation that wants to call them out on their debt, right, will bring all of their bonds or their currency or their treasuries or whatever to the actual nation in a gunship or a warboat. And they will bring it and demand their fucking gold and then bring it back to the country of origin and add that to that country's coffers. Well, the thing is, in 1973, warships from France. Okay, I can tell you that, my friend. I can tell you what the gold mines. The gold mines are actually privately owned, my friend, 90% of the time. They find gold, and typically this gold is on land that's either privately owned or 90% of the time it's not governmental gold that can even be mined. But even in the case where it gets seized, and it is, I can tell you, for example, here in Paraguay, right? There's a lot of gold in Paraguay, believe it or not. There's a lot of gold in Paraguay. Paraguay is a very poor country. Now, how do these two things equate with one another, right? Well, there's no mining of the gold because the gold is too expensive to mine. That's the problem, my friend. A lot of the gold mines, a lot of the silver mines have been exhausted at this point in time, especially silver. Silver is actually a better buy than gold in many, many ways for many, many different reasons. And I could go into them later. But anyway, back in 1973, gunships from France were on the way to New York City to go and retrieve gold. At the time, every piece of currency from the United States government actually was considered a gold and silver certificate that you could bring down to the post office and retrieve your amount of gold that you desired. You could go down to the post office with $100 bill or whatever, and they would give you that amount in silver and or gold, you see? But France on the way with all this fake money that had been printed, starting this liberal agenda that I just described, replacing the man with the government, that had actually, overextended us to the extent that France was calling our bluff. And these ships were on their way from two countries to New York City to retrieve gold. And while they were on the way, Nixon signed an executive order which took us off of the gold standard and turned us into a fiat-based currency. And that is how we started the downfall of the dollar, actually, was in 1973. 1913 was when we actually had the currency that we have today, which was Federal Reserve notes. That's when they were given their banking charter, was in 1913. There were many failed currencies before what we use as the dollar today. We had the greenbacks, we had different Civil War era currencies. In fact, I believe that the Union during the Civil War started printing up fake Confederate money to undermine the Confederate war effort during the Civil War. Currency has always been used as a weapon, guys, and it will always be used as a weapon. Wars cost money. Never forget wars cost money. A lot of money. A lot of money. In fact, most of the best money from war comes from funding both sides, you see? Because if you fund both sides of a war with extreme interest rates, you're always guaranteed a return. And they're always the best customers. The more you fuel a war, the more guns are bought, the more armaments are bought. You know what I mean? But it's besides the point. So in 1913, the Federal Reserve is created, and we are a gold-backed currency. In 1973, we have zero debt, but we are now a fiat currency. And then we started going into this cycle. This cycle of inflation. Yeah. Now, one of the best ways to look at inflation, to look at real inflation, this is actually a really cool little thing that you can do. Okay, brother, you want to know about that? I can tell you about that. What KV just asked is, I heard one time that the USA doesn't have gold in the international bank, but they keep on printing dollars. Is that right? And if yes, how would the nation keep silence? I'm going to tell you how that works, brother, okay? Because most people don't even know how currency is created, like the actual dollar bills themselves, okay? Basically, the United States government has zero money, bro. Zero, 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 zero. Negative money. They're like negative $30 trillion, okay? No money. They have no money. But what happens is Congress passes a bill, okay? And Congress will pass a bill that says something along the lines of, we need $250 billion for this, right? And then they send this bill to the Treasury Department. And the Treasury Department looks in their pocket and they say, well, we don't have this money. How are we going to pay this shit? Yeah? So then what they do is they print up treasury bonds, is what they do. That's what the government does. And then they go out onto the worldwide market, you see? And they say, okay, we need to raise $250 billion. Who wants to buy these bonds for money? Which is, these bonds are basically our children's future labor. Who wants to buy that for the United States? You see? This is some crazy shit, yeah? So then Germany will be like, oh, I'll do it for 3%. And then, France will say, oh, I'll do it for 2%. And then China comes in and they're like, oh, we do for 1%. And so it all goes to China, right? But then eventually China gets tired, and then we got to sell to France, and then France gets tired, and then we got to sell to Russia. And then eventually we have so many bonds out there, and there's so much money floating out there like there is now, that we go out with treasury bonds, and there's silence. No one wants to buy United States treasury bonds anymore. You're a fool. You won't keep up with inflation. Yeah? So, at that point, you have private investors, which isn't enough to move the market. And the only place that you can go is the Federal Reserve itself, the people that print the money, and say, okay, you need to give us your own money. You need to write a check to yourself and just print us money. And that's what's been going on. Yeah, I know, that's crazy, right? I know. He said, what the heck, in case you don't know. But, yeah, guys, that's what's going on with the money. Money is a very crazy situation. But it's been used as a method of control for a long time. And the reason is because the United States has the biggest cock in the world. And see, for a long time, like, for example, Saddam Hussein, right? Saddam Hussein, okay, here's the reason why the United States gets to pull all this shit. You ready? You ready for the craziest shit of all? The craziest shit of all? The only reason all this shit works is because of something in 1954 called the Bretton Woods Conference, right? I think it was 1954. But in the Bretton Woods Conference after World War II, we decided that the United States was the strongest economy in the world because they had been untouched by the war of World War II, and they didn't need to be rebuilt as much. And they were also giving out a lot of aid to other countries that did need to be rebuilt. So we decided collectively as a worldwide body, well, the powers that be decided, that oil that makes gasoline, as well as a lot of other products from plastics to a lot of different things, raw crude oil, will only be traded in US dollars enforceable by military law. That means if you want to start trading oil in euros, like Saddam Hussein did, well, you got a big problem, brother. You got a big problem. You got a big problem. And we might have to come swoop down on you saying that you got some WMDs or something. You know? It's the way the real world works, kids. Fuck with the money. Don't fuck with the money. Don't fuck with the money. Real big money. You can go down and shoplift a $2 candy bar, yeah. But you start going after hundreds of millions and, well, they're going to get you. They're going to get you. And when you talk about Iraq or OPEC or the BRICS nations starting to trade oil for no. That was Gulf War One, was the Kuwait invasion. And that was because what happened in Kuwait was really kind of crazy, actually. What happened in Kuwait was that Saddam Hussein was actually our boy back in the day, back in the Kuwait days. You know, he was a friendly to the United States, pro-America, yeah. We had helped him rise to power from a small person within the Iraqi military. And he had been led to believe that if he entered into Kuwait in what would just be considered national conquest, that he would be allowed to. I mean, he basically asked permission first, you know. But then when he did, just a lot of bad things happened. And it couldn't be allowed, you know. And so we had to swoop in and stop him, make a whole big show of it. But if you realize, we didn't topple his government afterwards or anything like that. We allowed him to go home and just said, okay, well, don't do it again, you know. Little slap on the wrist, so to speak, you know, for good old Saddam. But this made him angry. Very, very, very angry. And he felt betrayed by the United States, as did Osama bin Laden, who also felt betrayed by the United States. You know, I mean, he had been trained by the CIA, Osama bin Laden, to fight Soviet expansionism during the 80s. You know, Al-Qaeda and the Taliban were literally trained by the CIA. This is all public documents. So there was a lot of dirty things that went on in the Middle East to secure the oil interests. You know, we've always had our hand within the Middle East. We can't allow that strategic amount of oil to go unregulated. We just can't for our national security, you know. And I feel that even though it's all kind of fucked up, it's also something that had to be done. Because at the end of the day, the United States has a right to its own posterity. Just saying. Every country has to look out for themselves, guys. We're not part of some worldwide fucking socialist empire. You know what I mean? And if the United States wants to use its big cock to go and enforce shit all over the world and make everybody do what the fuck they want them to do, well, might makes right. You might not like it, but it's the way of the world. Might makes right. And well, until there's a more mighty person, well, that's just the way it is. Just the way it is. And we control the money. Well, not we. Well, I guess I am we, even though I live in Paraguay. But yeah, we control the money. So, and we really can't have the rest of the world dump all of our treasuries without having them lose so much of their own reserves. So no matter what way it goes, the rest of the world must continue to take on our debt, or else they'll lose so much of their own reserves just from depreciation that they would never do such a thing. That's why I know that the Federal Reserve will keep the shell game running forever. It'll never stop. We could be $50, $60 trillion in debt. As long as the military can swoop down on anybody that wants to pay for oil in rubles or euros or dinar or yuan, or Chinese currency, yuan, I believe it's called. As long as we can do that, well, you're gonna have to buy U.S. treasuries to buy gold. I'm sorry, to buy oil. And as long as that's the case, well, and there are certain things trying to stop that, like the BRICS nations. The BRICS nations are Brazil, India, China, uh, I think there's one other, I forget all the BRICS nations. But there's some of the nations that are trying to come together to create a currency that they can trade oil in outside of the dollar. But that's been met with a lot of aggression, obviously. I think we've gone too gloomy, Professor, at this point, although one person seems interested. Any other questions? Point is, that was Gulf War One. Gulf War Two was he was trying to get us off the gold standard with oil. He was trying to get us to, or I'm sorry, where we really went after him after 9/11 was because Saddam had been really pushing the euro to trade dollars or to trade oil, and that just simply couldn't be tolerated. Team America, fuck yeah. As I said, we have a right to our own posterity, and brilliant and to the point. I have this Q Arab nation grew last time as one nation grew. I'm asking why a prince in the Gulf region. I don't quite understand the question, but there really is no end to it, brother. There really is no end to all of it because people will always need money and people will always need oil and people will always want to sell things in the United States. And you see, this goes back to marketing a little bit. Where you see something called authoritative things, right? Like Google. The United States will only ask for as much as it thinks the world will tolerate without fighting. That's all that it will ask for. Because at the end of the day, the American people, number one, don't have a lot of will for war. We've been kind of warred out at this point after the last 20 years in Afghanistan. So we don't really want to fight anymore. And that's why you're seeing all this pushback from a lot of things and a lot of this isolationism and a lot of Trump trying to internalize the economy within the United States so that we're not as reliant upon the rest of the world by building up our manufacturing base and things of that nature. Because really at the end of the day, we have fucked up and the world has fucked up so badly over the past 40 years in its economic state and the state of its average human beings within, especially the Western world, to where, it just doesn't function. And a lot of these countries like England and we're gonna attack. We're already attacking Iran. Iran is being attacked by Israel, but it's being done with the assistance of the United States. So, I mean, if you're getting fucked up by a 12-year-old, but like an MMA fighter is helping the 12-year-old, well, who's fucking you up, bro? Let me ask you that question, right? If you're getting fucked up by a 12-year-old, but an MMA fighter is holding you down and slapping you around while the 12-year-old's kicking you in the nuts, well, who's really doing the fighting? You know what I mean? So, I don't think that Trump will directly attack Iran unless Iran really goes over the edge and starts attacking. Yeah. I think that unless Iran starts attacking U.S. assets, because if they attack U.S. assets, it's a forced response. And I don't think Iran wants that, which is why they haven't up until this point. That's why. But if they start doing terrorist stuff, if they start attacking our warships that we have stationed, I mean, you got to look at all the bases that we have around Iran. We could bomb the shit out of them in one day. We could literally make them a country of glass. Of glass. And I want to get off this topic and talk more about things of the ancient world, if we might. That might be more interesting to a lot of people about the Middle East. Do you know anything about the Middle East? Do you know that it's actually the cradle of civilization in the Middle East? That we had the ancient civilization of Samaria within modern day Iraq. The largest and oldest known civilization to mankind. Did you know that our numbers that we use, the number that I'm looking at right now, the number 1 and the number 3 for the number of likes, that these numbers themselves are Persian numbers. They're Persian Arab numbers. We did not use, exactly, yes. We did not use actual Arab numbers for most of recorded history. You know, we used Roman numerals, which did not have a zero, no zero, which makes accounting very, very difficult. So, we've taken a lot of things from the Middle East and the ways of culture and understanding for civilization and humanity, you know. And it was the birthplace of civilization in many ways. If you want to go back to the old biblical things about the Garden of Eden, it's believed to be somewhere off of the southern coast of India, you know. I mean, there's a lot of ancient history that has to go into modern day Iraq and the Middle East in general. You go and you look at the pyramids and these ancient structures they've just found below the pyramids, you know, things that have been foretold of by many people for many years that no one would listen. Because all these things are out there in ancient documents that no one reads, you know. Ancient Aliens. Ancient Aliens is a great show, by the way. You really should watch it. You seem like a good guy, brother. I hope you like and subscribe. But yeah, you know, the Middle East is an interesting place. And which hypothesis? Do I believe in what hypothesis? I'm waiting. waiting. We have a live chat going on with Mr. KV. Mr. KV. Keeping me entertained at 1 o'clock in the morning. Because, God, I can't sleep. I love doing these lives. Tomorrow we're going to be going out to another mall. Everyone should check out the last mall video. So anyway, where were we? Ancient aliens. You know who told about things below the pyramids long ago? Edgar Cayce, the American prophet. If you don't know who Edgar Cayce is, he was an American prophet back in the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s. They actually built a whole organization around his work called the Edgar Cayce Foundation or Edgar Cayce Association. No, ARC. I don't know. Anyway, ARE. I don't know. Areas for something in enlightenment. I forgot. But Edgar Cayce was a great man. Supposedly he was able to sleep with a book under his head and take in all that information. He was able to go into trances, which he then transcribed and documented, in which he gave medical readings for people thousands of miles away and gave them remedies that they could use for themselves within their own locality that would help them with their different ailments. You know, magic in the world is real. Magic in the world is real. I've known a lot of magic in my life. In fact, I practiced some magic when I was younger. Still practice magic today. You know? That's why I have a ruby amulet. Yes, magic. What can we speak about with magic? I can tell you about my magic. I can tell you about the magic that I did. You can look at my tarot card readings and look at some magic, but I'll tell you the story of some magic. The magic was no magic as far as real magic. Magic as far as dealing with gods and demons and asking for their presence in your life in order to affect change. Magic. Yes. It's more of being a cleric than anything else, but still it depends on what you want to think. I could be considered a warlock, I suppose. But I did a ritual once when I was at my darkest hour. I'll tell you about that ritual now if you'd like. And I'll tell you the results of it, which was that I was 21 years old. I was just out of my first marriage, my first failed marriage. I only had one other marriage. I mean, this one won't fail, so my only failed marriage. And I loved that woman. I thought that she was going to be the woman that I'd always wanted when I was 21, that was going to give me the love and support and unconditional love that I'd always wanted. And after she cheated on me, got pregnant, and told me the day after my birthday, well, I ended up back in my mom and dad's house and living in this cat-filled allergic house and sleeping on the floor and trying to get a dead-end job and feeling so alone. And eventually I met this girl, and she ended up leaving, and she had been this beautiful redheaded little girl, and I just thought, I'm never going to find somebody, and I'm working these dead-end jobs. And My life has been traumatic up until this point, and really, at the end of the day, I'm done, God. I'm done. 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 And God knows when you're done, bro. He knows when you're done. And I was ready to pull the trigger. You know what I mean? Like, really pull the trigger. Like, not like out of spite, just out of exhaustion. You know, I'd been through so much trauma by 21, 22, 21 really, that I just couldn't handle it. And I was like, listen, I got to do something. And so I did some magic. I did a blood ritual, actually. I know that sounds crazy and scary, but it was meant as a meant of communal. This was an actual art form that I learned from the Kabbalah, which is ancient Jewish magic. Yes? In which I took my finger and I made a small little cut. And then I took my amulet that I had at the time, which was a tiger's eye amulet, and I created an altar and a flame and a ceremonial dagger. And I laid all these things out upon the altar, and I communicated with a God. Now, the God that I thought I communicated with was the God of all gods. And I said to him, listen, I know you have plans for me, but I'm done. I'm done, and I'm going to kill myself. If you cannot come to some simple agreements with me, that you're not going to do bad shit to me anymore. You know? And the first thing I said was, I want to be rich. I want to not have to work and worry and stress and all those type of things. Number two, I don't ever want to go to jail. I don't ever want to go to jail for anything that I do, as long as I don't kill anybody or anything stupid crazy. And number three, I want a beautiful red-headed little girl that's going to stand by me through thick and thin, no matter what, and be my number one soldier. And it wasn't 2 weeks later that I met that girl, and it wasn't more than a couple months later that I had my first business, and I never spent a day in jail for anything that I ever did. So he kept his part of the bargain, and I kept mine, and I did God's work. I still do God's work. I'm still a soldier of God. So call me a warlock, call me a priest, call me an angel, whatever you want to call me. But I think that's magic. What do you think? I think that's magic. Not to mention the fact that I've just seen God's work too much throughout my life, where He'll break me down, God. He'll break me down into my most broken moments, and then save me. Build me back up again, stronger this time. Over and over and over and over and over and over again, until I've become this monster. This monster for God that He wanted me to be. You know, that's the way I feel. Thank you, bro. I appreciate someone that acknowledges that, you know, at least I know what the fuck I'm talking about. You know what I mean? A lot of people are so brainwashed, they're so gone, they can't even listen, bro. They just can't even listen. They can't even listen. I've met so many of them out here. Do you know why you meet so many losers in Paraguay, bro? Do you know why? Because they're all tools. They're all tools, bro. Like, I'm like, why is everybody out here a tool. And the reason is because they all move here for tax reasons, right? These are people that are too fucking stupid. Hey, Sec. These are people that are too fucking stupid to be able to figure out how to not pay taxes in their home country. So they're willing to go to relocate to another country to try to chase cheaper taxes instead of just like gaming the system wherever the fuck they are. You know what I mean? Like, when you're that level of imbecile that you're willing to like uproot your entire life to try to escape a couple of ducats of government control, right? That you don't even really need to evade if you're smart, and you do things intelligently. I mean, like, at the end of the day, like, this person is such a fucking tool. And they're all migrating here because here has no foreign earned income tax, which means that any money that you make from outside of Paraguay, there's no tax on within Paraguay. So they think that they're escaping the tax system. Now, you know what's really happening to these people? You want to hear the funniest shit? The funniest thing is that they're all being used. They're all being used. Is that money comes into Paraguay. You see, US dollars, euros, whatever. It all comes into Paraguay. People buy houses, people get businesses, deposit money in the bank, yeah? Money comes in, but it doesn't go out. You see? And the way that money works is that the more of another country's money that you have, it creates a trade imbalance in which they have to give you things in return. So Paraguay, their currency increases because, or at least stabilizes, because they have this influx of foreign capital coming in from people that are trying to evade the tax system, but in fact are vitalizing and revitalizing the Paraguayan economy by buying houses and things of that nature. But when these expats or whatever, now this is the funniest shit. You ready for some stupid simp shit? You ready for the stupidest, simpest shit you've ever heard in your entire life? When these expats go to sell their house, they realize no one will buy it. They have to find another idiot to come into the Ponzi scheme from outside of the country, or maybe someone within the country for bargain basement prices, less than they paid, to be able to buy the house. Or else they'll never sell it, because a Paraguayan will never have the money to buy the nonsense that they buy at the inflated prices they buy it at. I know, it's crazy. These guys are so stupid, bro. Right? Like this one guy, I know, he bought an apartment for $250,000, bro. And he's like, oh, well, I'm locking in my rent. I'm like, dude, hold on a second. Look at this place. Look at this kitchen. Right, my apartment's about as big as his, right? It's nice. Look at all that Diet Coke. Yeah. 3 bathrooms, 2 bedrooms, large living room, nice dining area. Each bedroom has its own bathroom. You know how much I pay for this place, bro? I don't want to go in the... Well, my daughter's not here, so I'll go in her bedroom. This is what one of the bedrooms looks like. Nice. Each has its own patio, right? Own bathroom with a bidet. Yeah? Right? So, nice place. Yeah? Do you know how much I pay for this place? $260 a month. Now you tell me, how many years of paying $260 a month does it take to add up to $250,000, bro? Locking in your rent, right? Nonsense. Total, complete nonsense. Everyone wants to go and live in Villa Mora, which is ridiculously overpriced because that's where all the expats live, you know? But at the same time, it's ridiculously expensive there. It's out, and the Paraguayans will never go and buy houses there because it's too expensive. They'll never have that kind of money. You know, when a Paraguayan buys a house, it's like 30 grand, 40 grand, you know? So yeah, it's a Ponzi scheme. It's a Ponzi scheme. And when you transfer money down here, it gets even better. When you transfer money down here, you see, you can transfer money down, no problem, usually if you know what you're doing. But when you transfer the money down here, and then you want, like, let's say, for example, you're like, okay, oh, I'm scared, I want to transfer all my money to Paraguay. Okay, so you transfer $100,000 down here. And then you're here for a couple of years and you're like, oh, I'm bored, I want to go live in Europe or something. And like you go and you like try to transfer your money out of Paraguay, they're going to be like, you've got to do this paperwork first. And the paperwork never ends, bro. There's like red tape. They'll never let you get your money outside of Paraguay, bro. Never. You see, then they'll say, oh, it's the rules, it's the system. Sorry. You see? That's all the way it is, bro. Yeah. So, I mean, every place has its own little nuances, you know? Well, that depends on how far back you want to go, brother. You want to talk about the Kabbalah? We can talk about the Kabbalah. You want to talk about ancient magic? We can talk about ancient magic. We can talk about ancient magic from different regions. There's a difference between the magic of the Kabbalah. There's a difference between the magic of, magic. Magic. What does magic come from? Magic comes from energy. Channeling. See, I'm not going to do it right now, but I'm able to draw power into my body, natural power, that I've trained myself to do. This is raw life force energy. Now, hundreds of years ago, this was able to be used for a lot of different things. However, barriers were put into place. That's a whole nother story. But back in the day, this is how you would commune with gods. Different gods did different things. And what do gods actually express except for energy? The energy of a certain thing. There was a god of wine, yes, for example. Now the god of wine, well, he would have the energy of wine. And there was the goddess of love, as many people know. She would have the essence and the energy of love. And so when you're partaking of this energy, well, all of this energy that you're feeling within yourself, that chilly feeling that maybe sometimes gives you goosebumps, yeah, that, my friend, is energy pure, raw, unfiltered, yes? And this energy goes somewhere. It goes to that God. You can give enough energy to a remote control or a pencil, and the thing will become divine. I give my amulet energy, it becomes divine, like a battery. That's why you wear it. They're charging it like a battery with your energy, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, your essence, your spirit. So we pray to the goddess of love, and she grants us love because that's her providence of her energy. We pray to the god of wine for wine, and well, maybe wine will appear because he is the god of wine, and he has the essence and the energy of wine, and we exemplify that energy. Do you understand, KV? Yes? So the first thing that you have to do when you're practicing ancient magic is to have a better understanding of the gods and their energy themselves. Yes. So when you look at the gods of nature, you start to find different things. When you look at the gods of war, you begin to look at certain things. When you look at the gods of knowledge, you begin to learn certain things. How aware are you of what's called the Akashic records? Have you ever heard of the Akashic records? Well, just in case you haven't, or whoever hasn't. The Akashic records are basically like the internet. It's the library of everything that has ever happened and everything that will ever happen, all in one moment. Here. It's all available. You just have to be able to tap into it. I can't consciously. I can subconsciously. It separates me. I don't know how to explain it better than that. Basically, everything that has ever been, everything that will ever be, trickles in to me from time to time. I can't say it better than that. But there's certain things that I know, like about our ancient civilizations, about, there are certain things that I figure out faster than I should. It all comes from the Akashic records. And learning to tap into the Akashic records is the greatest gift that magic can give, really. Once you learn how to train your mind to open up in a way where you allow for information from outside sources, right? That's not CNN or AP. Yeah. A development project. Let's get off topic for a minute. Tell me about your development project, Sec. What do you want done? I got senior level software engineers willing to work for anywhere from $25 to $35 an hour, depending upon your project. And for me, they'll work for goddamn free if it's good enough to make money. So tell me. Yes, with the Akashic records, you can, if you can't see basically the easiest way to understand the Akashic records and seeing the future is deja vu. Deja vu is the most common time that people tap into the Akashic records. It means that while they were sleeping or daydreaming or something of that nature, they went and tapped into the Akashic Records and downloaded something that was going to happen to them in the future. And when this event occurred, they remembered that they had seen it before at the same time as it was happening. That is deja vu, Akashic Record access. Yeah, AI stuff is too. No, no. I have an AI project that I need done, and it's on the back burner. I'll get it done for free, but your AI project, well, we would have to charge you for, because it's probably not going to work, bro. Mine's only going to work because I have the marketing behind it. Advertising is too expensive for these things, brother. You can have the greatest widget in the world. You could have the greatest cock-sucking device in the world. It doesn't matter what it is. It's getting people to actually fucking buy it. Or in your case, use it and buy it. Which are both individual hurdles. You see? And I'll talk to you about any automation that you need done, obviously. You know. But at the end of the day, you got to look at about the marketability of your products. You know, you definitely got to look at the marketability. You know, tell me you find an AI that cures cancer, and I'll tell you it'd be difficult to sell. It would be difficult to sell. Be like, Shaun, listen, bro, I got an AI that as long as people listen to it, bro, they'll never get cancer, bro. And it's like scientifically proven. And it's only $19.99 a month. And they'd be like, dude, never sell. I'll never sell. People want McDonald's. People want McDonald's. What do you want? You know, you're never going to get, and the 95% is just so gone, bro. Mm-hmm. Now, this is when we get into the authoritativeness that we were talking about earlier in the market. The Googles, the Amazons, the eBays, the Apples, the Samsungs, the people that are authoritative in an industry where their presence will never be shook from their platform. You see, back in the day, there were a lot of search engines. There was mama.com, there was Ask Jeeves. There still is all these search engines, most of them. I think the latest contender for search engine war was Bing. Yeah, but who says I'm going to go and Bing something? Nobody. I think they tried for a little while to get it into pop culture, but you're never going to go and say, oh, let me go and Bing that real quick. No, you say, let me go Google something. You see? Because Google is authoritative. You know, you say, oh, I want to go on an auction site. Well, do you go to Yahoo Auctions, which in many ways is arguably better than eBay, or do you go to eBay? You go to eBay, you see? When you want to buy something fast and have it delivered to the house fast, you trust Amazon. You know, we have different things that this is part of what was called Web 2.0. That was started about. Really, Web 2.0 was more of a concept back in the early 2000s. Web 2.0. It was a concept in which we said we will make authoritative sites for everything, where people will just go. My wife is telling me it's time to go to sleep. Well, I think this has been a good live, and I'm gonna call it a night. Go say goodnight to my wife. Try to relax a little bit. I love you, baby. And I've had some good conversations tonight. Hopefully, people take a look at this. Bye for now. And remember, what you do not learn from me, life will teach you.